7. Tina Pichi. In Fresno, California, in June of 2019, a criminal complaint was unsealed against 4 people with connections to the Modesto Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Some of the accused individuals were then president of the biker gang, Randy Pichi, and his wife, Tina Pichi. And according to U.S. Attorney McGregor W. Scott, they were charged with conspiracy to distribute and possess with intent to distribute meth. Court documents revealed that Randy led a drug conspiracy and that he directed Tina to deliver drugs regularly to fellow Hells Angel Michael Meese and other individuals throughout Sirius, California. Randy also enlisted help from 32-year-old Michael Pack, a prospect with the club, to obtain meth for his illegal business on at least one occasion. Randy, Tina, Michael Meese, and Michael Pack were all arrested on June 25, 2019, and they were scheduled to appear in federal court in Fresno 8 days later. According to the Department of Justice, Pack was apprehended with the rest of the group. But unlike his co-conspirators, he was found to be in possession of 499 grams of methamphetamine. That's over a pound of the illegal substance. On another occasion, Tina was directed by Randy to drive to Redding from Modesto to deliver meth to a customer. But on the way to her destination, Tina was stopped by law enforcement and was caught with about 4 ounces of the drug, which she'd wrapped up in a plastic glove and placed in a cup of soda to hide her illicit activities from the cops. After making their arrests, officers then executed multiple search warrants as part of the investigation in 7 different locations across Stanislaus County, including the Modesto clubhouse of the Hells Angels. This case is being handled by several government agencies: the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Central Valley Gang Impact Task Force, the IRS Criminal Investigation Agency, the Modesto Police Department, and more. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Laurel Montoya and Ross Pearson were called to prosecute the case. If convicted, the defendants could each face a maximum statutory penalty of life behind bars, a mandatory minimum of 10 years in federal prison, and an additional $10 million fine. And while Randy, Tina, Meese, and Pack all have yet to be sentenced for their crimes, the vice president of the Modesto Hells Angels, Michael Schaefer, received 5 years in prison for his part in a different drug trafficking conspiracy in May of 2022, one that involved marijuana and heroin. 6. Biker Gang Wives. In April 2021, a fight between biker gang wives broke out at Chipper's Bar in Austintown, Ohio. Law enforcement was called to Mercy Health Austintown on April 10th on reports of an assault that had taken place the same night. When officers arrived at the hospital, they spoke with a woman there who had a swollen lip, a chipped tooth, and cuts all over her face. The unnamed victim claimed that another woman had attacked her inside Chipper's Bar, which is located on North Edge Hill Avenue. She said that the assailant accused her of talking crap about her behind her back in 2020. And the victim also explained that she and the suspect were married to members of the Pagans motorcycle gang. After the altercation, the police interviewed the victim's husband to hear his side of the story. And he said that when the fight broke out between the 2 women, his pagan brothers held him back from intervening. Then, when everything was said and done, the victim drove herself to the hospital to be treated for her injuries. On May 3, 2021, the suspect, who was later identified as Brandy Clevenger, turned herself in to the authorities. At her arraignment, she pleaded not guilty to the assault charge, and her bond was set at $1,250. Brandy, who's from the city of Canfield, had her pre-trial hearing scheduled for June 21st, but the outcome of the case is unclear. 5. Brandy Partney. On February 11, 2023, a 36-year-old woman from Washington was arrested after being accused of hitting a spectator with a wooden baseball bat at a Majestic Valley Arena boxing event. According to a press release and charging documents from the Flathead County Sheriff's Office, FCSO, Brandy Partney was charged with 1 felony count of assault with a weapon, and she was also hit with a 2nd felony count of tampering with evidence. The resident of Walla Walla is also an alleged member of a Washington-based biker gang. Following her arrest, Brandy was booked into the Flathead County Detention Center. Brandy stands accused of taking part in a violent fight that involved as many as 50 individuals at Flathead Valley Fight Night in the city of Kalispell. And apparently, several people who were at the event were members of the Warlords and Pagans Outlaw motorcycle clubs. During the altercation, at least 2 people, a 16-year-old male and an adult male, were assaulted and substantially injured by sworn members of the motorcycle gangs. And according to the press release, after the fight, the victims were transported to the Logan Health Hospital for treatment. At around 9:30 p.m., the FCSO received numerous 911 calls, reporting a large group of about 50 people getting violent in the crowd at the Majestic Valley Arena. Multiple agencies responded to these distressing calls for help, including the Sheriff's Office, the Montana Highway Patrol, and the Kalispell Police Department, who all arrived at a rather chaotic scene. After things settled down, witness interviews were conducted and video footage of the incident was reviewed, which showed Brandy Partney striking at least one individual with a wooden baseball bat. For her violent actions, Brandy was swiftly located and arrested. But several other suspects who were involved in the brawl fled the scene before law enforcement arrived. On February 23, 2023, Brandy appeared in Flathead County District Court before the Honorable Judge Danny Kaufman. During the hearing, the judge approved a motion to modify Brandy's bail, reducing it from $150,000 to only $50,000. Judge Kaufman also required Brandy to wear a GPS monitoring device and ordered her to stay on house arrest at her residence in Walla Walla. Dustin Partney, Brandy's husband, provided testimony in court via Zoom and told the judge that he needed his wife home so she could help care for their 3 kids. Dustin was reluctant to admit to the court that he belonged to the Pagans Motorcycle Club, but he eventually did. He also confirmed that Brandy wasn't a member of the club, which he emphasized was not a criminal organization. Brandy has yet to be sentenced for her crimes, so for now, the case is ongoing. 4. Latria Phillips. A Hells Angel from Anchorage, Alaska, and his wife were sentenced to federal prison in October 2019 for drug trafficking. It was announced by U.S. Attorney Brian Schroeder that Charles Denver Phillips, who goes by Pup, and his 46-year-old wife, Lois Latria Phillips, were sentenced by U.S. District Judge Sharon L. Gleason for 2 charges: conspiring to distribute methamphetamine and actually distributing the drug. In August 2018, the couple admitted in their pleas that they maintained a large stash of meth that they intended to sell in Alaska. They confirmed that they kept some of their stash in their residence, but maintained the majority of it in a Conex that was kept at a dog kenneling business in Anchorage. On August 7, 2018, law enforcement officials observed Charles and Lois selling methamphetamine to one of the couple's repeat customers. The police watched as Lois left her apartment and drove to the dog kenneling business where the Conex container full of meth was kept. They then observed Lois's return to her apartment, where she gave 401 grams of meth to Charles. Afterward, Charles sold the meth to their repeat customer, prompting the authorities to intervene. 3 days later, search warrants were obtained by law enforcement to search the couple's apartment and their off-site Conex. The Phillips residence contained 120 grams of meth, some of which was placed in baggies with scenes from the Disney movie Frozen printed on them. Other objects were discovered inside the apartment as well that would indicate some involvement in drug trafficking, like several digital scales, $24,942 of illegal proceeds, and various drug packaging items. The police also noted that the apartment contained clothing and decor that reflected Charles' membership in the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. And in the Conex, law enforcement turned up an additional 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms of methamphetamine. With ample evidence stacked against them, it was easy for the prosecution to secure a conviction against the defendants. And in the end, Judge Gleason sentenced Charles Denver Phillips to 18 years in federal prison, with an additional 5 years of supervised release. Lois, on the other hand, merited a shorter sentence due to her spotless criminal record, and only received a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, plus 4 years of supervised release. 3. Carly Hanchett. In September 2016, A Weld County judge decided that there was enough evidence to charge a female member of the 21 biker gang with a murder that took place a year prior. 19-year-old Carly Hanchett was one of the 6 members of the gang that was arrested for being involved in the stabbing of a woman from Pierce, Colorado. Carly was hit with 3 charges, including conspiracy to commit first-degree murder after deliberation, first-degree murder, and violent crime causing death. After she was arrested, the judge appointed to her case stipulated that she'd also be held in custody without bond. Tara Lewandowski, the 34-year-old victim, was reported missing after she failed to attend a doctor's appointment. Then, in April 2016, her body was discovered almost 100 miles, 161 kilometers away in the city of Laramie, Wyoming. Crystal Griffin, another defendant, explained to police that Carly struck Tara in the back of the head with a metal pipe, while Daniel Meyer, a former Pierce Town board member, and others stabbed the victim in the chest with hunting knives. Daniel has also since been charged in connection with the case. Crystal Griffin went on to tell authorities that she believed the murder stemmed from a disagreement between Carly and Tara. And apparently, the victim was also upset with Daniel for swiping her prescription medications, giving the ex-town board member a motive for the crime. In December 2016, Carly pleaded guilty to the charge of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, which meant that she faced up to 48 years behind bars for her role in the slaying of Tara Lewandowski. Carly's husband, Michael Vasil, was also implicated in the crime and pleaded guilty to assisting in the murder. It became clear to detectives after a year-long investigation that Carly and 4 co-conspirators, including her husband and her brother, Scott, stabbed Tara to death because she disrespected the 21 biker gang. And after the murder, it took the authorities almost 6 months to locate the victim's remains, likely because the group responsible for the crime burned all of Tara's belongings after dumping her body in Wyoming. In the end, Carly Hanchett was sentenced to 28 years in prison, while her husband, Michael Vasil, received 60 years for his involvement in Tara Lewandowski's death. Daniel Meyer was sentenced to life behind bars, and Crystal Griffin, after accepting a plea deal, was ordered to serve 12 years in a halfway house for accessory to murder. All the other suspects involved in the case pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and are serving terms ranging from 12 to 50 years in prison. 2. Kenya Hatchet. A woman from North Little Rock, Arkansas, was accused of hitting her husband with her vehicle and killing him outside a bar on Asher Avenue on November 18, 2017. According to witnesses, a fight broke out inside the Big Dog Motorcycle Club on the day of the incident, and during the altercation, the victim, 45-year-old Clyde Hatchet, was stabbed, prompting him to try and flee the establishment before getting hurt any further. However, when he left the club, the people involved in the fight followed him outside, and it was at this point that the victim's wife, Kenya Hatchet, got into her car and attempted to hit the rowdy group targeting her husband. But according to a police report, she struck Clyde by accident instead. Another man, Kenneth Lee, was also hit by Kenya's Dodge Caravan, but he was barely injured. Kenneth and several other witnesses allege that Kenya tried to hit the crowd of people 2 different times. Little Rock police arrived at the scene at around 3:30 a.m. on November 18th to find Clyde lying in a pool of his own blood. Kenya was taken to the hospital following the incident to be treated for non-life-threatening injuries, but there was little that could be done to save Clyde, who was already gone. Clyde's body was subsequently sent to the medical examiner's office in order to determine his exact cause of death. It was later revealed that the fight that led to Clyde's death was started after Kenneth Lee confronted Clyde about wanting to sleep with his wife. Kenya had apparently approached Kenneth and told him that no one wants to sleep with your ugly-ass wife. Kenneth then responded by cussing her out, forcing Clyde to step in and defend his own wife. According to Kenneth, Clyde then punched him in the face, causing several others to join the fight. It's unclear, however, who stabbed Clyde. Kenneth claimed that after the fight was broken up, he found Clyde unconscious on the ground. He said he picked the man up and placed him in the Dodge Caravan, but that he fell out of the vehicle. And it was at this point that Kenya backed up and ran over Clyde. Kenneth then explained that when he tried to pick Clyde up again, Kenya ran over both of them. However, it was later determined that Clyde died from being stabbed, not from being run over twice. It's not entirely clear what the truth is in this case. On one hand, Kenneth could be telling the truth, but he could also be lying about certain details in order to make himself look less guilty in the situation. Kenya was visibly distraught during her interview with the police and claimed that she had no idea that her husband was unconscious under her car. And while Kenneth was initially arrested for the crime, all the charges against him have since been dropped. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear even more stories, stay tuned for some extra content that you might have missed. 1. Lydia Sal. In Half Moon, New York, in 2012, 51-year-old Lydia Sal attempted to kill her husband, Michael McKee, by stabbing him over a dozen times. Miraculously, though, Michael, who was trying to join the Prisoners of Fate biker gang at the time, survived the attack and went on to testify against Lydia during her trial. Lydia's defense team argued that she stabbed Michael in self-defense, as he was beating her after a confrontation between the couple over Michael's biker gang activities. Then, after stabbing her husband, Lydia washed the blood off of her hands before calling 911 herself. However, Assistant Public Defender Andrew Blumenberg argued that Michael's wounds, which were allegedly inflicted with a 6-inch, 15.2-centimeter knife, were superficial and shallow, not at all consistent with the prosecution's theory of a deliberate murder attempt. Andrew then asked the judge to impose the minimum for the violent felony charges, a 5-year sentence. But County Court Judge Jerry Scarano denied this request and rejected Michael's version of events before handing Lydia her sentence. In the end, the judge ruled that the brutal knife attack was unprovoked and sentenced Lydia to 16 years in prison with an additional 5 years of supervised release. Judge Scarano also issued a permanent protection order to Michael, prohibiting Lydia from having any contact with the victim. In 2015, Lydia won a new trial, but the outcome is unclear. And as far as we know, she's still serving her time at the Saratoga County Jail. 9. Luke Hawks. 28-year-old Luke Hawks was out of jail on bail when he caught his most serious charges yet in 2022. In an effort to get home before his court-imposed curfew, he sped through a red light and crashed into another car at an intersection. 19-year-old Bethany Branson was thrown from the passenger seat of the vehicle, despite wearing a seatbelt during the crash, and she sadly died from her injuries. Hawks initially fled the scene, but returned a short while later with his mother. He allegedly became irrationally defensive and hostile, telling officers that he hoped he killed someone, and he seemed incredibly drunk, and he smelled strongly of booze. He was arrested for causing Branson's death, and the evidence presented was pretty clear-cut. The accident was captured on surveillance footage as well, which showed the victim's vehicle following traffic laws while Hawks barreled straight at it. And an investigator estimated he was driving 75 miles per hour, 121 kilometers per hour in a 30 mile per hour, 48 kilometer per hour zone. Hawks admitted to causing death by dangerous driving and was ordered to serve 10 years in prison. 8. Jose Gilberto Rodriguez. Over a week-long period in 2018, the greater Houston area was terrorized by a string of 5 violent robberies, 3 of which ended in murder. 4 victims were shot, and only 1 of them survived. Using surveillance footage, investigators quickly suspected 46-year-old Jose Gilberto Rodriguez, a parolee who had served 27 years in prison for multiple convictions, including robbery, assault, and auto theft. He was released in 2017 and had established himself as a model parolee while attending required meetings with his parole officer, passing drug tests, and holding down a steady job. That all changed when Rodriguez cut off his ankle monitoring bracelet and disappeared from the halfway house he was staying at. Law enforcement received a tampering notification, but said that there was nothing outwardly suspicious about the monitor's movement. so no red flags were raised. Teresa Williams, who owns the halfway house where Rodriguez was living at the time of the crime spree, told the Houston Chronicle that he was a hard worker who mainly kept to himself and helped out around the property. She said he went to do laundry one day but never returned. Rodriguez was taken into custody on capital murder charges after leading police on a short chase. The outcome of the case is unclear. Hopefully, justice was served. 7. Wendy Jones. In April 2021, Las Vegas police officers arrested 23-year-old Wendy Jones for allegedly stealing Rolexes worth tens of thousands of dollars from some men staying in hotel rooms along the famous strip. One victim claimed that he met Jones, who called herself Sarah, at a casino. The two drank together, and she encouraged him to keep drinking. At some point, he blacked out. He woke up in a casino valet area and was quickly taken to the hospital. The man suspected he had been drugged, and his $45,000 Rolex was missing from his wrist. Just days before, another man met an attractive woman named Sarah at a casino and invited her back to his room. At some point, he fell asleep, and when he woke up, she was gone, along with his $45,000 Rolex and iPhone. The victim told police it was unusual for him to suddenly fall asleep, making him believe he had been drugged. A few weeks before this incident, a man was visiting Vegas and met a woman calling herself Rosa at a bar. They went back to his room together and ordered drinks. Rosa insisted on him finishing his margarita. He fell asleep shortly after and was out cold until 10:30 a.m., which was unusual for him. The man also said he felt drowsy and sore and was missing his $37,000 watch and $1,500 in cash. Jones was finally busted for the thefts and was hit with 3 counts of felony grand larceny. 6. Daria Brown. A 22-year-old woman from Iowa named Daria Brown went viral in 2022 for her behavior during an arrest. Police in Iowa City encountered the young woman in a visibly upset state, hitting on a bar's windows from outside. Brown allegedly admitted to assaulting an employee, and while the bar wasn't going to press charges, she was arrested for her combative behavior toward responding officers. Body cam footage showed the woman refusing to cooperate, even after being handcuffed, and kicking at the cops as they tried putting her in the back of a squad car. Brown was accused of trying to steal an officer's taser and assaulting 3 others. But after seeing a cop strike Brown repeatedly in the back during the body cam video, some people wondered if the police were too harsh on her. That wasn't the case though, according to law enforcement, who told local news station KCRG that Brown has a history of being belligerent toward police. In fact, at the time of her arrest, she was on probation for a similar incident. In 2018, she admitted to hitting a cop car and resisting arrest. She had also assaulted a hospital staff member and resisted arrest in a separate incident. The following year, she pleaded guilty to an operating while intoxicated charge and for refusing to cooperate with police. And several months before her most recent arrest, Brown allegedly tried to bite a hospital security guard and punched a staff member. She seems to have avoided news headlines since, a hopeful sign that she's straightened out. 5. Harvey Marcelin. In 2022, 68-year-old Susan Layden's dismembered torso was found in a shopping cart in Brooklyn, New York, the day after she was reported missing. 4 days later, someone found her leg in a random pile of trash on a sidewalk. Police quickly connected the crime to 83-year-old ex-con Harvey Marcelin, a transgender woman who had previously served time for killing 2 of their girlfriends. Marcelin's criminal records date back to 1957, beginning with assault and gambling charges. She was paroled in 1984 for fatally shooting someone in 1963. Then, in 1985, a year after her release, she stabbed another woman to death and dumped her body near Central Park. The serial killer was paroled in 2019, less than 3 years before Layden's murder. Social media revealed that the suspect and her latest victim had interactions online a year before the murder. Marcelin seemed infatuated with Layden, whose family and friends have said it was uncharacteristic for Susan to associate with someone with such a checkered past. Like many people, they've been left wondering how someone who killed twice was set free and given an opportunity to strike a third time. Cops found the victim's severed head inside Marcelin's apartment, along with a bloody mop and an electric saws box. They uncovered surveillance footage that showed her disposing of Layden's leg, and security video also showed the victim entering, but not leaving, the suspect's apartment building. A medical examiner concluded that Layden died from blunt force trauma to the head and determined it was a homicide. Marcelin was charged with concealment of a human corpse and second-degree murder. She pleaded not guilty, and the case seems to be ongoing. 4. Elizabeth Long. It's a situation that's become all too familiar in recent years. A delivery truck pulls away from a house, an unrecognized car pulls up a little while later, and the driver gets out and snatches the resident's packages off the front step. A 37-year-old woman from Yakima, Washington, named Elizabeth Long, was identified as one of these so-called porch pirates in 2016 after being caught in the act on a doorbell camera. At the time, Long was already wanted on a felony arrest warrant. After dealing with her criminal cases and being released from custody, she allegedly struck once again during the 2017 holiday season. And for the second time, doorbell security cameras filmed her stealing packages. As soon as police saw the footage, they immediately recognized her, according to Sergeant David Cortez, who spoke with the Yakima Herald during their latest search for Long. Cortez said that the car seen in the footage matched the vehicle they found in Long's driveway, and that they found some stolen property at her home as well. She was eventually charged with third-degree possession of stolen property. 3. Simon Mellors. In 1999, Simon Mellors fatally beat and strangled his lover, 36-year-old mother of two, Pearl Black, at their home in Nottingham, England. He was sent to prison for 14 years, but his sentence was reduced. In 2011, he was released after serving just 12 years. Black's family warned the parole board that Mellors would strike again, but they granted him freedom anyway. In 2018, he stabbed 51-year-old Janet Scott and ran her over with his car because she wanted to end their relationship. She died in the street, and Mellors tried to kill an officer who rushed to Scott's aid. He was charged with murder and attempted murder. An inquest found that his probation officer failed to keep proper records on Mellors' relationships with women after his release. Just days before committing his second murder, the ex-con himself warned probation about his stalking tendencies. By then, he had already started following Scott to her workplace and had even gotten a job with the same employer, asking to be transferred to the location where Scott worked. A mental health nurse contacted probation about Mellors' behavior out of concern for Scott's safety, but apparently nothing was ever done. There was also evidence of parole violations, which should have caught the attention of multiple law enforcement agencies and put Mellors back in prison. He decided to take his own life while awaiting trial for the murder. 2. Julianne O Farrell. A serial thief from Cork, Ireland, named Julianne O Farrell, has so many convictions under her belt that it's hard to keep track. By 2019, she had 111 previous convictions, including 26 for theft. She was even caught stealing from a nearby business during a court lunch break. She had given birth just 6 weeks earlier, but apparently becoming a mother wasn't enough to change her ways. After being arrested, O'Farrell allegedly told a cop, "I was fleecing the city for years before you ever caught me." Her defense attorney claimed his client was going through a rough time after the death of her partner. But by then, O'Farrell had demonstrated a clear pattern of behavior dating much farther back. The judge sentenced her to 10 months in prison for the lunchtime thefts, but as soon as she was released, she went right back to stealing. By early 2023, O'Farrell's ever-lengthening rap sheet had jumped to 227 convictions. including 74 for stealing. As her crimes continue, her sentences have started landing her in prison for longer terms each time. 1. Jack Hinrich. In late 2022, 33-year-old Jack D. Hinrich broke into a Salvation Army chapel in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, where he piled up a few winter coats that were donated to people in need and set them on fire, causing thousands of dollars worth of property damage. NBA player Chet Holmgren donated coats to replace the ones destroyed, and Hinrich pleaded guilty to second-degree arson. He was sentenced to probation, which required him to get mental health treatment and to abstain from using guns, drugs, or alcohol. The seemingly lenient punishment came despite Hinrich's repeated arrests before and after the arson, including allegations of fighting with police, as well as theft and disorderly conduct. Just days after his sentencing, he was accused of smashing windows with beer bottles at a local pub, causing $1,000 in damages. A few weeks later, a bail charity paid $3,000 to get him released from jail. The next day, Hinrich allegedly trashed a coffee shop, causing terrified customers and employees to run for cover. Several people locked themselves in the bathrooms out of fear for their safety, and at least one person thought there was an active shooter. Hinrich left $8,000 worth of damage in this rampage, which left one employee so traumatized that she was afraid to return to work for several days. He had been kicked out of the shop earlier that day too, and returned with an apparent desire for vengeance. So far, the only jail time Hinrich has actually served has been while waiting to resolve each of his criminal cases. He faces multiple charges of felony burglary and property damage in connection to the coffee shop incident. Police Inspector Elliot Faust criticized the bail charity that helped him, telling the Star Tribune that while he understands the premise of why they do what they do, it defeats the purpose of what bail is truly meant for in the first place if someone blindly throws money at any old case. Would you ever consider joining a biker gang? Why or why not? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.